Before you watch this video, go ahead over to the Plain Living YouTube channel and check out my first tutorial on how to make cloth napkins. I'll show you how to miter the corners, how to create your very own hem guide, and how to make the basic cloth napkin. Go ahead and prepare your cloth napkin, get all your seams pressed and your corners mitered, but don't sew yet. Come back to this video and I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can upgrade your cloth napkins to make them even fancier. The first thing we can do is to put a loop on one of the corners so that you can hang it from a hook. This makes them super cute and it allows us to do some other upgrades later on in the tutorial. I'm going to prepare some 18-inch square napkins here. Go back to my other video for the tutorial on how to do this, how to create your seam guide, and how to press up all the corners. I'm also going to go ahead and miter these corners. Now if you're a beginner sewist and you're looking for some tips on how to make your life easier and how to make your final project look better, check down in the description box below. You can get my free ebook with my top 10 tips and tricks on how to make your sewing look more professional. To create your hook, you need a 1-inch wide strip of fabric. The length doesn't matter. If you're going to do a lot of napkins, go ahead and do a long strip, press it and sew it all at once, and then we'll cut it down. You'll see that I fold it in half and press it, and then fold the raw edges to the center and press it, and then sew where the opening is. Okay, I know that was really fast, so let's go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you again how to sew this. You're going to set a straight stitch and about a 3mm length, and you don't want to start sewing right at the tip because it'll be hard for your machine to grab onto it, so put a little bit of your fabric behind the presser foot, so you're starting about 1 inch down. And then line up the very edge where the opening is, not on the folded edge, but the place where the 2 folds touch. And we're going to sew straight down that edge and close that up. And you end up with this long, skinny strip of fabric here that is completely closed up. And I'm going to cut it into 4-inch chunks. You see, I just trimmed off the end where I didn't start sewing until about 1 inch down into the fabric, and I don't want to use that piece that's not sewn, so I snipped that off. I'm going to lay this on my ruler, and I'm going to cut about every 4 to 4.5 inches, and you'll see I end up with these little short pieces that are going to make my hooks for each napkin. I like to do it this way, where I do one long strip, press it all at once, and sew it all at once, and then cut it into sections, because it's a lot easier to handle than to cut those little 4-inch sections and try to fold them up and mess with your iron and then try to feed them through the machine. Now take one of your prepared napkins with the mitered corner pressed up, and you're going to take your clips off of one corner. You're going to fold your hoop. You're going to fold your loop until the ends meet, and we're going to stick those ends up under the mitered corner so that all of the raw ends of the hoop are enclosed under that fold of fabric. It's a little bit tricky, so don't be afraid to take it out and put it back in and take it out and put it back in and make adjustments and play with it. And once you have it right where you want it, make sure you have it clipped into place and make sure everything's tucked in just right. And then we're just going to sew like regular on the mitered corners where we sew all the way around, making sure to catch each flap of the miter, and we'll just sew right over that loop as we go around. Now you see mine fell out, so I didn't have it clipped in good. So really just take your time to get that in there, make sure you have it in the right place, and all the layers of the fabric are just right and clipped securely. I'm going to trim the threads off, and here's the finished product. You'll see the nice mitered corner. That loop is fully fastened into the corner, and I've got this regular stitch around the inside edge of the fold all the way around. So just a simple addition of that loop and the same sewing techniques gives us an even fancier cloth napkin. My second tip to upgrade your napkins is just to sew a top stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the outside edge. Something about this double stitching just feels luxurious and fancy, and it's just a really easy way to elevate your napkins.
Wow, look how nice these dotted napkins are. You can make them too.
Here are some of my napkins that I've already done the double stitching on, and I want to show you how we can add a button so that you can roll these napkins up and put that loop that we just sewed on over the napkin so that you can create this cute little self-contained decor item that you could put in a basket or place on a plate on a tablescape. So it's as simple as folding the sides in, rolling it up, and hooking the little loop over the button. So let me show you an easy trick on how to install this button without having to have any special attachments for your sewing machine or use any hand sewing skills. First, we want to lay our cloth napkin pretty side down on the table. Turn your napkin so that it's a diamond shape with the loop furthest away from you. Take the left and right corners and fold them to the center. Fold up the bottom corner and then roll it in a width about enough for a fork and a knife to stick inside. Then pull your loop tight around. Put a pencil inside the loop and make a mark right where your button would need to go. Then when you unroll your fabric again, flip it back to the pretty side. Your mark will show you exactly where your button needs to go so that everything will roll up nicely and fit.
Time to add the button.
Take your napkin and your button to your sewing machine, and you want to find your length and set it to 0. On some machines, you won't be able to set your length all the way to 0, so you want to open up your machine down here, and you should have some sort of lever or switch to turn your feed dogs off so that they won't grab the fabric and pull it in. If it's not inside the machine here, it may also be on the back side of your machine, but somewhere there's a button or a lever to disengage that. So once you've got your length set to 0 or your feed dogs disengaged, you're going to put your napkin up under there so that your mark for your button is right under the needle. And then you're going to put your button under the foot, and you want to try to line up 2 of the holes right in the hole of your presser foot. So some buttons may have 4 holes, and you can go 2 that are next to each other or 2 that are diagonally. I'm realizing here that my button is too small and my presser foot won't sit on it, so I'm actually going to pick a bigger button out of my collection that'll work a little bit better for this. And I think I'm going to end up picking one with 4 holes. So I'm going to sew mine diagonally so that once I've stitched across the first 2 holes and then the second 2 holes, it's going to make an X. You don't have to do that. You could sew them in a square, or you could sew 2 parallel lines, whatever design you want. But we want to line up 2 of the holes where they line up in the gap in the presser foot. And then I'm going to set my machine to the widest zigzag stitch that I have. You don't necessarily have to set it to your widest width, because we're going to have to play with this and adjust it. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the widest. Now you're going to use your hand wheel on the right hand side of your machine. You're going to turn it towards yourself and lower the needle. And very carefully and slowly make sure that the needle goes through the hole in the button so that you don't bend your needle. Now, as I continue to turn my hand wheel, the needle is going to come all the way up, and then it's going to move over to the left. And I'm going to slowly lower it and make sure that it goes into the hole on the other side of the button. You may have to make some width adjustments here to make sure that the needle will go the same width as the holes in your button. You can see here that mine worked fine, so I'm going to hand turn a few more stitches, and then if you get really brave, you can gently press your presser foot, and you want to sew a good bit here, maybe 15 to 20 stitches. And then I'm going to raise my needle, and I'm going to pull all of this out, and actually, since I have 4 holes, I'm just going to rotate it until I hit those other 2 buttons, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure that as my needle comes down on the right side, it actually goes through a hole, and then when it goes up and to the left, it goes down into the hole, and then I'm going to gently press my pedal to sew and let the machine do all the work for about 15 to 20 stitches and really get that button nice and secure. Raise my needle and presser foot, pull that out, and trim the threads. And then to really secure this, you can take your top 2 threads and tie 3 or 4 knots in it before you trim it, and then also take your back 2 threads and tie 3 or 4 knots in them to make it nice and secure before you trim them. And here we go one more time. If you place your napkin pretty side down, where the button and loop are facing, well, I faced them down in this, turn the left and right sides in, and then turn that bottom edge up. Roll in a width about enough to hold a fork and a knife, and then you'll be able to tuck that button right into the loop so that you have this cute little bundled up napkin. Now, speaking of cute and bundled up, another way to upgrade your cloth napkins is to make these little quilted napkin rings. These are super simple and you can do them with the scraps. If you don't have any quilt batting or interfacing, just go ahead and throw an extra layer of fabric in the middle just to give something for those snaps to pull against, because they will tear your fabric. But here's what they look like. If you don't put the buttons on, you can fold your napkins up and put these napkin rings on instead. And this is even a bonus because you can take these quilted napkin rings and use them as cord keepers for organization. Oh, I almost knocked my camera over. You can roll up your cord, wrap this around it and snap it, and then you have a great organizational tool or for when you travel. And these are super cute to give as gifts. To make this napkin ring, you need 2 pieces of your fabric that are 7 inches by 3 inches. And then a piece of batting or interfacing that's a little bit bigger than that. Or of course you could do that third layer of fabric. And then you're going to need a cam snap set. This is usually just this set of snap pieces and the pliers that you use to crimp them on. First, place your piece of batting or your piece of interfacing down, and then take one of your pieces of 7 by 3 inch fabric and place it pretty side up on top of that batting. And then take your other piece of 7 by 3 fabric and place it pretty sides down so that the pretty sides are touching. I like to iron all mine in place again just to be sure. And then this is going to be hard to clip because my batting is much larger, and it's going to be hard to pin because it's so many layers, but I am going to throw just 2 clips on here to hold it all together. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew about 1/4 of an inch from the edge all the way around. But I'm going to leave an opening. So I'm going to start here at this mark. I'm going to put my needle down and pivot at each corner. And when I get back to this mark, I'm going to stop. And I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end so that this space in between is left open. And that'll give me a spot to turn this right side out after I sew. Once you've got that sewn, you want to trim all of the excess batting, clip your threads really well. You'll want to trim all of these seam allowances down to about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch because you don't want too much bulk when we go back to top stitch this. And you're also going to cut off the excess in the corners very close to the stitch lines, but make sure you don't actually cut any of your stitches. And you're going to cut that extra triangle off because there's not going to be enough room inside that corner to stuff all of that extra fabric once we turn it right side out. And right here, when we trim over our opening, we do want to leave the full 1/4 inch here so there's enough fabric to tuck in and stitch down. You see how I cut that diagonally and left just a teeny bit of fabric so that those threads have something to hold on to? But where the 2 edges intersect, I was very careful not to cut those threads. I'm going to cut all 4 corners. And then I'll show you the easiest way to turn this right side out. So we're going to find the opening where we didn't sew, and we're going to put in between the 2 fabric layers where the pretty sides touch, not in between the fabric and the batting. Okay, so put your thumb inside where those pretty sides of the fabric are touching and push it up into one of the corners. And then take your pointer finger and pinch it and then turn it right side out. And that'll pull that other corner along with it. And then for the other end, you're going to do the same. Once you get all the corners pushed out as much as you can, you're going to put your thumb inside. You're going to push it up into a corner, and then pinch down on your thumb to hold that corner, and then fold the whole project back over your pointer finger to turn it right side out. Now to get these points nice and crisp, if you have a point turner, that would be really helpful. I'll link one below what I'm talking about. They're just a couple bucks. But if you don't have one, you could use a crochet hook or a knitting needle. I'm just going to use a pencil and be very careful. Actually, I'm not going to be very careful. I think I poke a hole in it at one point. But just very slowly wiggle all that excess fabric up into the corner to get a nice, sharp corner. Now take your time and just keep running whatever tool you're going to use along the two edges where the corner meets. I'm sorry I took this off camera. But you just want to keep rolling those seams out, and you'll know that you've reached the right point when you can see the stitches start to show through. You don't want to push through the stitches, but that will indicate that you've gotten everything pushed out right. Next, stick your pointer fingers down into the gap and tug on it to make sure it's even. And then you'll see here that I take my middle finger and thumb and pinch one point so that I know that's where the fabric matches. And then I can pull the rest of it tight and line it up. And then we're going to lay it down and we're going to press all of that so that it's nice and flat and no wrinkles and everything is lined up exactly where it needs to go. Now the problem here is we still have that opening, even though it's pressed nice and flat and everything's lined up. So we need to top stitch about 1/8 of an inch all the way around this. And while I do that, I'm also going to go ahead and quilt. Now quilting just means to sew through all the layers. Once we finish sewing all the way around the 4 edges, I'm just going to sew an X from corner to corner as well. Okay, I'm sorry I lost the footage of where I showed you how to sew this. But once you do have that sewn, now you need to take out your cam snap kit. Now you could do buttons and a loop. That's a little bit more difficult. These cam snap kits are very affordable and you get tons and tons of snaps. So it's totally worth getting if you want to do this little addition to your cloth napkins. You're going to need 2 of these caps. They're smooth on one side and then have a spike on the other. And then you're going to need 1 female piece and 1 male piece. The male piece is the snap and the female piece is the receiver that the snap snaps down into. Now you want to take your napkin ring and roll it up and really pay close attention to how the snap is going to function once it's on. So what I mean by that is that the smooth side of the snap is going to be on the top of the fabric on one end, but on the bottom of the fabric on the other end. So when you roll it over, the male and the female piece are actually touching to snap together. So you're going to take your awl, you're going to poke a hole in the center, and I folded mine in half to find the center, and then I poked that hole, and I like to wallow it out really good. I'm going to take the smooth cap and push it through, and then I'm going to take one of the snap pieces and place that spike through the hole. And then I place my thumb on the smooth cap and hold the snap on the other side with my 2 fingers so that I can slide it into the pliers here and place it up under the crimper. And then you firmly squeeze. And what it does is it flattens that spike out. And when it flattens, it secures the snap onto the cap. Now you see here that we need to put the other side of the snap on this side of the fabric. So you see how that should go, but look, when you unfold it, that's actually going to put the snap on the same side of the fabric as the other smooth cap that we just put on. So just really take your time and pay attention to this. So I'm going to use my awl to poke that hole out. I'm going to put the spike of my cap through there. I'm going to take my other piece and line it up on that spike. And I'm going to check again. I'm going to double check that when I fold it up, the 2 sides that actually snap together are going to be touching. Trust me, double and triple check because I've done this wrong so many times. Now remember, put your thumb on the smooth side, 2 fingers on the sides of the snap side, and you can slide the cap right into that little black piece. And then squeeze your pliers, and voila, you're done. You've got a quilted napkin ring. Now how cute is that, and how simple were those cam snaps? Now, once you have this kit, you'll be using snaps on everything. I hope that you try all of these upgrades for your cloth napkins, and I hope that you give some as a gift or that you're able to sell some. Now, if you are a beginner seamstress and all of this has been very helpful to you, but you're still kind of intimidated about going to the store and buying fabric, stay tuned for my next video. I'm going to walk you through how much fabric you need, what types of fabric to buy, how to buy the fabric, exactly what's going to happen in the store, so you can walk in there with confidence and not be worried about what questions are they going to ask, or does somebody think that you're stealing the fabric when you run away? And you'll be able to get exactly what you need without any hiccups.